Exam tips for the F581 exam. So essentially the exam is split into some distinct areas. The size in terms of marks may vary, but it roughly follows the same overall structure, and the case study tends to come in this order as well. So you've got some initial topics, the concepts like base economic problem, opportunity cost, PPFs, and you might need to draw opportunity cost on a PPF, little topics like specialization and trade, command economies and market economies, then lots of potential questions around supply and demand, the graphs, but also the factors affecting. And just remember that if it's a factor affecting, try and make it a change. So an increase or a decrease in incomes will lead to an increase in demand, and the AO3 comes in the middle when you analyze it. So try and make it a change at the end and link it to a change at the other end. There may be some questions around consumer or producer surplus, and there is likely to be a comment question at this part. Not always, but there could be a comment question. The guaranteed middle part is 10 marks around elasticities. That little mnemonic of don't cry, it's really easy. We'll take up some of those. There's potentially a definition, possibly a calculation, always going to be some kind of interpretation, whether it's elastic or inelastic, and what that means for the different elasticities. And depending on the question, maybe a recommendation in terms of price or supply to the market, and then evaluation. And the guaranteed evaluation is that they are only estimates, but if you want to get more AO4 marks, you need to develop that. They're only estimates. They may not be the correct figures, so a business or government might make an incorrect decision. The last big section is around market failures in government intervention. Now there's always some smaller mark questions on market failures. Why is something a market failure? Draw a graph, identify external costs. But there's also potentially a comment question that could come around a market failure. So comment on the extent to which something is a public good, comment on the extent to which information failures are the reason for this market failure. And then the guaranteed essay question is around government interventions. Most of these will be effectiveness questions, same as we've done at A2, but one or two of them may be questions around whether something should or shouldn't be a public good. Okay, so the key first thing to do when you're in the exam, the time you have is 1 hour 30, and as the marks go, you're roughly 20 marks for every half an hour. So the last question, which is worth 18 marks, needs at least half of an hour of your time. So the essay down here. So just be careful of where you are in relation to the time. So as you have a 9:30 start of exam, at 10:30 you should be planning and get ready to start your essay at the latest, and take time to plan that essay, just a quick 2 sides, and how you're going to evaluate, and then check the question again. Don't assume that the plan you've just written is 100% correct. Make sure you check the question. In the case study itself, when you're reading, underline some of the key economic bits and pieces that may be relevant to answering the questions. So this will kind of get you warmed up, but it'll also maybe help you when you come back to look for some specific things. And the case study should tell you what the market is, and you need to be referring to the market in nearly every question that's not a definition or a describe question. So if the market is the tea market, the word tea should be appearing in your answers. If the market is the chewing gum market, the word gum should appear in your answers. If the market is the market for cars, the word car should appear in your answer. And in terms of the answers, read the question and answer the question. So when you're reading the question, underline the keywords in the question and make sure that some of the words in the question appear in your answers. If the question is to state and explain 2 factors that increase demand, the word increased demand should be in your answer. If the question is discuss the effectiveness of taxes, the phrase the extent to which a tax is effective should be in your answer. And use the marks for the questions in terms of, is it a 2 mark, 4 mark, 6 mark, 8 mark, 18 mark, and especially for the smaller mark questions, have you give them 2 distinct things that they can give you a mark for? Okay, in a lot of the questions there will be a word that's in bold. Now sometimes it is the command word, so it might say discuss, might be the word in bold, to try and lead you to the most important word. Sometimes it's numbers, so it might say identify 1. Sometimes it's the word and, to tell you that they want you to do 2 things. So something and something, show this on the graph. Sometimes it's the words most, in terms of most effective. So if there's a bold word in the question, double underline that, make sure that you use that because they're trying to tell you that this is an important word in terms of your answer. Bring a calculator because it's likely in the F581 exam that you'll be calculating elasticity. The 2 questions to watch out for is the big discuss question, because that needs evaluation, and 2 comments. However, there have been 1 or 2 exams where there's been 3 comments, but the key to these is that they are 2-sided. Read the question, the one side will be in the question, and then you will evaluate using the other side. Okay. So just a couple of quick question structures to be careful of. The 18 mark questions tend to be discuss the extent to which or discuss the effectiveness. Most of them tend to be discuss the effectiveness of. 1 or 2 of them are discuss the extent to which. So taxes are the most effective. This means that you need some kind of comparison. So taxes are more effective than regulation or vice versa. That question, you need just a quick comparison to another method. Don't explain the method, just say why it's more effective. For example, you could say taxes generate revenues that can be spent, whereas regulation is just put in place and then people may follow it. The extent to which taxes are effective, we've done that a lot of the time, same as road jet charging. If it says regulation alone, again, it's kind of asking you to compare it to at least one other form of government intervention. To discuss the extent to which questions are sometimes slightly different in terms of you are justifying a point of view. So if healthcare should be subsidised, you're using an argument, something like it's a positive externality, yes it should be subsidised. You could also say that it's a public good, it should be subsidised, but then you could say that it's maybe over-consumed if it's free, and then you can use the negative externality argument. The same arguments can be applied to whether or not education should be a public good. So positive externalities on the case for, maybe merit good, and then again you can say if it's free it could be over-consumed, misallocation of resources. Some people might go to university and get a degree and then never use that within the economy. The other thing to be careful of is the specifics of the question, in terms of a lot of the questions it's assumed that we are putting taxes on things, but you could discuss whether or not taxes should be reduced, and then you flip the arguments around. So taxes maybe should be reduced because of inelastic demand, but they shouldn't be reduced because they solve negative externalities. and the same for subsidies. So you could say in this example, solar panels, subsidies should be used because there is a positive externality of solar panels and the market will benefit, and without them they might be underconsumed. But then you could say that it's a misallocation of resources, government money, which could be spent elsewhere, or that there's potentially inelastic demand for them, so it needs to be a large subsidy to get people to actually invest in them. So just a few key points to consider when preparing for your F581 exam.